Good morning, this is Ken Larson. I am with Land in Arkansas, buying, developing, and selling. I'm with Brent Farmer, who runs Living in Arkansas on the YouTube channel. What we're doing today is trying to answer some questions. If you're interested in land and you ask yourself, what do I need to do? Where do I start? Who do I talk to? Etc., etc. We're going to try and cover a lot of those different things. The main thing before you even start, know your location and know the difference between recreational land and what I consider everything else when you're out in the country, developmental land. Recreational land, you'll see cheap prices in a lot of ways, in a lot of places that just do not compute. That means there's no water, no electric, etc. We will cover that more in this episode. If you watched our original episode, it was buying land in Arkansas, and we kind of went over the things I look for personally that are very important, whether you're going to develop it, or again, as we touched on recreational, you just want to sit on it, what have you. But we're going to kind of go over land that I bought about a year ago that's further along in the process than the listing we just showed you. What I look for, all those things I mentioned, we'll touch on all over again, and you can kind of see it in action. And some of you may be asking, does Ken wear the same clothes every day? The answer is sometimes I do. But Brent made me do this show right after we did the first one, so that's why I look familiar and a little sweaty. So anyway, this property came open after I developed my first property down the mountain. This was 40 acres total, and it hit on everything I mentioned that I like to do. You have land on both sides here, and Brent, if you can you sort of can see those trees, but we'll get on there and show you a little bit more. But when I looked at this property, and we'll get you some pictures of it, you literally have the water line running along this road all the way down there. So the water is here. You have the electric, which is kind of back over there, hidden between the trees on that cabin we did. So it's here. You have absolutely incredible views. You have the aesthetics up here. We're up here by ourselves. All these properties are going to be brand new cabins, homes, what have you. I've sold several of them off, but it's just it hits, like I said, all cylinders that I want. So on this side, you're literally going straight up the mountain. When you're on top, you can see the sunrise. You're looking east, obviously, and looking west, you can see the sunset. That is very hard to find. It's just a wonderful piece of property. And what I did when I bought this property, I went ahead and cut it up or divided it. The survey on this was a perfect rectangle. So I did 5 acres, if I recall here, 10 acres there. This property across the street, which we'll kind of drive by with the cabin that I actually built for short-term rental purposes, but went ahead and sold to another investor, is on roughly 6 acres. It all perked. Both of these properties have already had a perk test. This property's already had 2 perk tests, and there's a 3rd perk test down there. Electric, again, electric, water, everything is, this cabin is functioning right now. So let's jump in here and we'll follow up on up here.
Heck of a view, and it doesn't really translate through a GoPro very well, but that is spectacular.
And following up on, again, the original episode, when I bought this land, you couldn't see past the road. It was all covered up. But again, I knew what was back here, and I started by punching a little hole here to get the view. This is west facing. This is one of the prettiest sunsets you'll ever see. It's just absolutely gorgeous. There's actually a patio back here that you can look out over there. I brought in a bulldozer originally. What I like to do when I buy the land is I will run trails around the peripheral of the whole entire piece of land. So we did that up there. We came down here. I wanted to build down here originally, just because now you can see the power lines closer and you have the water back there. You're literally right between the power and the water, which is extremely hard to find when you're out in the country. And this whole piece of property runs down there the same way. I sold this house to an investor out of Tulsa who's a great guy. He's redoing it because apparently didn't care for my taste. I understand, but it's going to be a neat little short-term rental cabin. What I did across the street is I sold a piece of land, 5 acres I believe, to a woman from Minnesota, 10 acres to a gentleman that actually lived by me down in McKinney, Texas, and then I kept the far end, or I rebought the far end, believe it or not. I don't want to get into that for something else that I'm doing right now that we will go up there and show you, but this is what you can do when you buy the right piece of property. You have a wonderful bench down there that I believe this gentleman's going to put another cabin down there and put more along here. This tract right here is 6 acres, and it's just a wonderful, peaceful area. There's just not a lot up here. We have this one road, and it's going to be myself and kind of the people I mentioned, and those are the things that really, you know, you're hitting on all cylinders. Now on the land clearing, what I've done, I've got very good relationships with a couple of guys that own land clearing companies. The bulldozer is what you want to use really to clear the trails. It's very rocky up here, and he bitched and moaned the entire time, but did a great job. The other piece of equipment is an excavator, because you have to dig, whether you're digging a power line, well, these power lines are buried, water lines, you know, digging out the foundation, moving rocks, etc. Those are the 2 main pieces of equipment you need. They're actually not as expensive as people think, and if you get with the right crew, I prefer to pay by the hour because these guys are really good, and they're going to come out cheaper. When you get caught up in your city stuff, as I did originally, and want a flat rate, they're going to overcharge you probably because they want to cover themselves and be fair to you. But a bulldozer is about $130 an hour in this area. An excavator is roughly the same thing, depending on size, etc. And they can do a lot of work in one day. I think I had this whole 6 acres cleared out in one day, so $130 times 8, you can do the math. About $1,000, a little over $1,000, I believe. But just love it up here. This is kind of the end result. We've got another property down here that I'm currently working on that we're going to go down and take a look at to show you in process of the land and the things it takes. Remember, you are in a forest up here, and there are things, you know, I make jokes, this reminds me of a Vietnam War movie. I'm very big on the land, especially if you clear it, you've got to get something down. So the invasive plants, briars are horrible. They're the little thorny things that I absolutely hate, and Brent has very fair and sensitive skin, and he can't stand it either. You just don't want them to come back. So what I'm doing right now, and this is on a different subject, I'm planting white Dutch clover and mini clover, which is a great product. The deer love it. It will actually stay green in the winter, and you'll have deer all over your property, but it's also great for butterflies, bees, the environment obviously, and it's just a good thing to be aware of when you buy property, that you need to get something down the minute you clear it.
Yeah. Another great tool to have is a side-by-side. You really need it getting up and down some of these mountains so that you can see the entirety of the land. So I highly recommend finding a realtor that has one that can show you around these mountainsides.
All right, Brent, we're going to kind of give touch base on part of clearing land. Usually you try and timber it a little bit. That way the lumber goes to good use, etc. But you're always going to have something left over, and sadly you are going to lose some trees. Just don't cut them all down. But what we're doing here today is we're going to burn a pile, which is a lot of fun. And we've already called in the county sheriff. You need to call in your controlled burn. You need to explain them what you're doing. You give them your address, your name, etc. And you need to make sure you're not on a fire ban, which there has been a lot of them lately. But what we're going to do is just kind of walk you through. It's a little bit of fun. You know what this is, Brent?
Flamethrower.
This is a super cool ass flamethrower that you can burn stuff with. All right, this is the pile we set on fire earlier. What we tried to do, and these are just things you learn, the wind is obviously blowing this way. We started down there, we have it blowing up here. It's cleared all the way around this, so there's very little chance it'll spread, but you need to keep an eye on these things. And that and the fact, the reason why I like to burn, or I am burning today, is we've had a lot of rain recently, which...
a lot of rain.
A lot of rain. When it gets dry up here, the scariest thing you can possibly do is try and burn something. I've actually set the mountain on fire twice. God bless the volunteer fire department. They're fantastic. You pay your fire dues and they are there generally on spot. I don't like doing that, but it's very nice to have those people. And again, those people are volunteers, and you know, I can't say enough about them. They're taking their own time to come and do these things.
Since you know them on first name basis, do you want to say any personal thanks?
They might cuss me.